Yeah, it's mindset cafe, we all got that mindset. Gotta stay focused, never settle for less. It's all in your head, how you think you manifest. So get ready to rise, cause we about to be the best. Gotta switch it up, gotta break the old habits. Get your mind right, turn your dreams into habits. No negative vibes, only positive.
What is up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Mindset Cafe podcast. It's your boy Devin, and I am thrilled today to welcome Dan Storey. He is a truly inspiring individual. He has turned his life from average to extraordinary, right? Dan is one of the top natural physique bodybuilders in the UK, even though now he's on the East Coast. But he's also an accomplished author. He's a trainer and a motivational speaker with a deep passion for understanding and transforming human behavior, which we're going to dive into some of that today because this is the Mindset Cafe. But Dan, thank you so much for taking the time to, come on today. And I'm really excited to really dive into your expertise, especially with the NLP.
Thanks, Devin. Yeah, it's exciting to be here. I love the bio. Every time I hear about that guy, I'm like, that's going to be cool to listen to. And then I forget that it's me. We have to update it. I'm actually now one of the top in the world. So technically second in the world in my classification after the natural Mr. Olympia competition just the other week in Vegas. So super recent. But trying to always push the limits and challenge myself.
No, that's awesome. I mean, let's dive into that first, right? Before we start getting into some of the other stuff with, the mindset aspect, because this podcast is really about personal development as well, in beyond mindset. And with being a natural bodybuilder, right? How did you get started in that?
Well, this is the thing. It is it's very physical, but it's a purely mindset thing. I started, This is what kind of kicked off my personal transformation journey was a few years ago, seeing a photo of myself. And, you're middle-aged, you got your dad, you got a comfortable job, you're sitting around all day, you're enjoying the food, that kind of thing. And we went to the beach and my mum took this photo. It was me and kind of my daughter on the beach. And I looked at it and I didn't see what I would expected to see. I saw, physically like an average guy, like 40-ish, dad bod, that kind of thing. Trains, goes to the gym, so it's not terrible. But what I saw instead was somebody who just had a ton of excuses. And it was just, come on, Dan, you talk a good game, but you don't live it. And it was this weird kind of disjunction in my head where I saw one thing and I thought I was something else and I couldn't reconcile it. And all I could hear was excuses. And so it kind of kicked me in the butt and was like, come on in, what are you going to do about it? And so that was what kicked me off. And I said, I said to my little brother who had some experience and I'd always play sport. I said, do you think I could be a bodybuilder? And he's like, don't do it. Don't do it. I'm like, well, why not? He said, it's addictive. It's challenging. You're going to kind of get sucked in. And all I heard there was positives. And I'm like, let's go do it. And so I set myself this goal of just doing my first competition and, dieted for a long time, tried to figure out and learn a whole bunch of stuff. And did my first competition and just carried on challenging. And that was, after 2 years of competition, to find myself on the natural Olympia stage was an honor. And to kind of find myself in second place was a little bit of a surprise, but kind of as a recognition of all the kind of effort and discipline that I put into it.
No, I mean, that's amazing. That's a huge accomplishment. You should be really, really proud of yourself for that, right? And especially to do it in such a short amount of time. Right. You really exemplify the fact that dedication is key, right? If you're really dedicated and you're almost obsessed in a healthy way with achieving a goal, like anything is possible, right? The world is limitless in what you can achieve. And so one thing I want to dive into a little bit is about, because we say natural bodybuilding, right? And people that don't know, there is a separation between the two. Right. Yeah. There's the Arnold Schwarzenegger, category, right? Which everyone thinks right when they hear bodybuilding show, that's what they go to. But natural bodybuilding is a little bit different, right? I wanted to ask, what is the requirement? What is the testing to make sure that someone is natural?
So there's a big long list and you have to be very familiar with it because as soon as you break it once, that's it, you're out. And, so there's a WADA, I think the World Anti-Doping Association list of things that you can take. So it's the exact same principle as the Olympics. And the Olympics would be really interesting if all of these guys were enhanced, right? That would just be, I would watch that, and this is why I love the bodybuilding side, the the pro side where they do use performance enhancing, drugs and supplements and all those kind of things, because those are the elite physiques. That's the best of the best of the best in the world. And, they're doing things that some people won't ever push themselves to get there. So it's not that I don't admire those guys. I do. I think they're phenomenal athletes and they challenge their bodies in ways they want to do it. I'm a little bit more interested in longevity. I have a little 4-year-old daughter. She probably wants me to be around, although she doesn't say it very often, to be around for a little bit longer. So I'm trying to do it from a healthy perspective, but also, get to that same level of expertise. And you mentioned that word there, obsession. It really is. There's passion, which people are really into, but to get to this level, it is an obsession. And, people have looked at what I do and carrying around Tupperwares and not eating and kind of going out to family dues and that kind of thing. And they're like, what are you doing? Like, is everything okay? And I'm like, yep, I just got my goals. And after a while, you just deal with that. And people don't understand obsession unless they've been in a place of obsession, right? And whether that's, you could be obsessed in business, you could be obsessed in family, whatever it is, as soon as you go into obsession, you're like, oh, I recognize it now. And it's a different level of performance. So just people, it's fun to go and play with sometimes.
No, definitely. And I think that people get like this bad, the word obsession gets a bad rep, right? It's people think, if you're obsessed, that's unhealthy. And it's not that. It's the fact that obsession is basically the next level of motivation, right? Motivation is something that is fleeting, right? You're motivated today, but you're not motivated tomorrow. But obsession is that motivation to continue doing what you're supposed to be doing, even on the days you don't feel like it, right? Because you're obsessed with achieving the goal that you've determined for yourself, right? Or that you set for yourself. So I think that's so amazing that, that you've set yourself out on that for, 2 years in a row. And, if you already accomplished that second place, I know that first place is itching, for someone that's competitive.
We'll see what happens next year, right? So it's all about how you show up and who else shows up, and, you can just turn up and be your best.
No, that's awesome. So going into, again, to that fitness part of it, right? Bringing the Tupperwares you mentioned around, right? And me, my main business is actually in the gym industry, right? I have a gym franchise that, we're national with, but when we have these fitness challenges and stuff, and people only have to stick to them for 11 weeks, right? For these, short-term challenges, but you're talking about something that's further, than that, because, if you've been training, let's say last year, and you knew you're going to go again, it's not like you just stopped doing what you were doing. You might have had some cheat days and maybe some relaxation on how strict you are, but you can't just all of a sudden go back to your old ways beforehand and then try to jump back on the horse. So what was that whole process for you, and how did you get over like the hurdle of bringing your Tupperwares and everything to essentially gatherings?
I took one to a funeral, which is crazy. Right? My stepdad died a couple of weeks before one of my shows, and like everybody would look at me and like, "Are you going to still do the competition?" And I was like, "Yeah, why would I not?" He was part of the journey. He was there encouraging me. He saw the results from my first show. He was like, "Wow, this is amazing! Like, keep going." So I would never stop just because like that was getting in the way. But you also have to kind of balance what you're doing around it. And I think it was weird. Like the Tupperware thing didn't happen for a little while, but for the first, like in my first prep or my first diet, it was about 14 months. That's how long it took me to get from that kind of initial phase to actually going on stage. I was probably ready sooner, but timing of competitions and stuff just didn't line up, so I had to stretch it out a little bit longer. But yeah, 14 months. And for 14 months, I weighed every piece of food that I ate. I weighed every meal. And, I had the little kitchen scales. They're not high tech, but you put stuff on and you're like 30 grams of oats. That's what I'm at. I'm like, what? How? Why is that so small? Just the eye-opening idea of like, that is not a portion of food because I like to eat. And you're like, okay, well, that's fine. And so you just adjust your eyesight and, what a portion of food looks like. I opened my eyes to how much protein I needed to have. I was nowhere near my protein intake. And actually, even though I was dieting, I ended up eating more food than most people. People look at me like, how you eat so much? My wife still says it, like, how are you eating all the time? And I'm losing like weight just in prep, because I'm like, this is how food works. And so you just become aware of it. And, you can go out and you can make healthy choices. And, I'm a dad, and we have, my daughter's friends, their parents will go out and we'll kind of do Taco Tuesdays and stuff like that. And so I'll look at food and I'm just trying to figure things out. So, okay, well, that's about that. And if I have a beer, I'm far enough out, I can have a beer. Like, then it just means I change things over here. And so, it's a balancing game. If I take something from here, or I want to invest over here a little bit more, I just move stuff around. And as soon as you figure out all the moving pieces, then it becomes a game. But the more you can control, like, the easier it is. So if I'm going to have if I'm going to have 3, 4, 5 meals a day, again, and I know one of them is going to be a little bit more relaxed, then I'll just make sure I'm super strict on the other ones. So yeah, Tupperware it will be. I've got food cooked in the fridge that I know is really good for me because my daughter and her friend are having a play date later, and there's going to be chocolate. I know there's going to be chocolate. And even though I'm in off season, I'm trying to just be a little bit sensible. But it's just that kind of thing. It's just about saying, okay, well, I want to say yes over here. And so I have to say no over here. Most people say, oh, I want to say yes over here and here and here and here. And I think the obsession piece and the discipline piece is just about knowing how to say no and when to say no, and saying it in a way that doesn't make people hate you. Because sometimes people say, you're not going to have a drink, or you're not going to do it. And they take it personally. I'm like, no, it's about me. It's not about you, which is still a funny reaction. So yeah, just saying no artfully and letting people off the hook for their excuses is probably the hardest part of the journey.
No, definitely. I think like going with that is like not like succumbing to basically peer pressure, right? And knowing that, you have these goals and stuff, and it doesn't need to be, this is like one of the conversations I have the most is, well, I messed up last night. And then I'm like, okay, like my whole thing is like you're saying, if you're going to basically go out to dinner, right? And this goes beyond challenger prep, right?
Yep.
If you're going to basically have, let's say Cheesecake Factory for dinner, and you have an idea of what you're going to eat, right? I say Cheesecake Factory, that's my wife's, favorite place. I'm not a huge fan, but that's hers. But if you're going to go there, okay, well then take away some of the carbs earlier in the day, right? Yeah. Give and take, right? And so you can learn to play with your nutrition once you start to learn it. But it's like in the beginning stages, I recommend kind of, try to stay as strict as possible, right? Because the more you give in to making those fluctuations in the beginning, when you're still trying to understand everything and how it works and how your body works and how your body responds, that's the most difficult, right? Yeah. So if you're not strict in basically proving to yourself that you can avoid temptation, you're going to give in to all those little temptations. Like when your daughter has her play date, that chocolate would, be gone right when you see it, right? So it's one of those things where that all that is built, and it's built through consistent, behavior, consistent action. So I think that's so awesome that you mentioned that. So going into, you being a dad, how old is your daughter, by the way?
She's almost 5. She's 5 in 2 weeks. So she started kindergarten this year, and she's growing up fast.
Okay, so we're not that far. My daughter is 2. She'll be 3 in January, beginning of January. So, we're fairly in the similar boat. She started preschool. So with that being said, right, and how do you fit being a dad in, being a husband in, and then also committing to your own fitness journey, especially at the high level that you're competing and doing all these things? Because every day, the everyday gym goer can find a million excuses why they can't go, yet you're proving that it could all be done.
It can't all be done. So that's something to realize, is that there are things that I do that mean that I can't do other things. So we have to sacrifice. And for me, sacrifice is not goats and virgins, but this idea of giving something else up to have something that other people don't have. So, I give up sleep is probably the biggest one. So I wake up 5 a.m. every day. That's the promise, right, to myself, is that gym opens at 5:30. I'm awake at 5. Awake is a loose term. I grab myself a coffee, have that same morning routine, kettle on, a little bowl of cereal for pre-workout because I'm a child. And, I kind of wake up and I get to the gym for about 5:30 and I do my workout and I'm home by 7:15. And at 7:15, they're just starting to wake up and I can come in and be a dad. And that part is done. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to worry about, working out in the evening or saying, oh, bye, see you later, and like leaving everything in the evening, except during competition time. Like occasionally I'll do some evening cardio or something like that, second workout, but not very much, actually. I can balance it. But that's it. It's sacrifice. So, and we've recently moved to New York when we were in Prague. So we were in Prague for a year before. And life schedule was different. So she went to school at 7:30, which meant we started prep for school at 6, which meant gym was 4. o'clock, 4:30. And I remember, if you read the book, I think it's 5 a.m. Club by Robin Sharma. I remember reading that book and thinking, yeah, let's do 5 a.m. and reading it. And I was like, okay, I'm super motivated. Let's do 5 a.m. and set my alarm for 5 a.m. And felt like a truck had hit me. But I'm like, okay, it's supposed to be good for me. And the next day I managed to do like 5:15 and it was 5:30. And I think I made 2 or 3 days and then I gave it up because I had nothing calling me. There was no reason to get up. I was just getting up for the sake of getting up. And as soon as you realize that there's got to be something attached to that, then you become dangerous, as we call it. Now I don't have to worry about when the alarm goes off. I just get up. It's practice and it's mindset, but it's also purpose. I reimagine myself now. I see myself differently. I'm now a competitive bodybuilder. I'm second in the world, looking to be first, as you could probably tell. And that comes with a price. Not everybody gets to be there, and you've got to put the work in. So that's my window for work, is that morning, because after that, I'm dad. I'm dad. And if you listen to my daughter, she'll call me Daddy Muscles, which is one of the biggest, most amazing things as part of this journey, is she started calling me Daddy Muscles. Although we had parents morning this morning, and she drew a picture of me and I had stick arms. I'm like, come on. Like, even one of the other dads was like, you need to get in the gym. But it's that, as a dad, you have to take things seriously, because as much as you say, it's the actions that they watch and they observe and they copy. And so, yeah, I'm trying to be the best version of myself for me, but also set a decent example. But it's not easy, man. It's not easy waking up at 5 a.m. It's not like it sucks sometimes. I just want to stay in bed. But if I stay in bed, then when I get on stage and I'm there and I'm trying to say, this is the best version of me that I am, I know I'm lying, because I could have done more. So that's the thing that's always in the back of my mind, is when you're on stage, have you done the work?
See, that's awesome. And for someone that understands, motivation deeply, and, you talk about purpose and you talk about attaching something to getting up at 5 a.m. How would you help people? Because I know your mission is really to, help people and motivate people as well. How do you help someone stay motivated when they feel that progress is slow or stagnant?
So we got to understand that motivation is temporary and discipline is a choice. So the first part is vision. Is you got to believe that something is possible, right? That's the first part. And I found my vision board the other day from when I started this, and I had some of the best physiques in the world. And at the time, I didn't fully realize the difference between performance enhanced and not, and natural and not. And so I'm looking through Instagram and I'm like, oh, that physique is amazing, and that guy's amazing, and many of them are not natural, but that was what I aspired to be. And I had to have the belief that this was possible, right? Other people have done it, so I can do it if I follow that path. I just got to keep on the path and not quit and not give up and do those things. So I knew that the end result was possible if I stuck at it. I didn't know how long it was going to take. I didn't know the process or anything like that, but I knew if I could stick with it, then it'd be fine. The second thing is then understanding that as soon as you set that goal, as soon as you say, I want to look like that person, everything in your body is going to go, yeah, but you're not that person. And there's this massive imposter syndrome. And I remember saying to people before I'd done my first competition, oh, I'm a bodybuilder. And my brain literally going, no, you're not. You're lying. Why are you doing that? And so I keep using this quote that Ali said. He said, I told the world I was the greatest long before I stepped in the ring. And so we've got to be able to have this vision of ourselves and believe it. And with the doubt, know that we've got to go and show up and do the work. And then that's it. It's just the discipline to go and do the work. And, there are still days where I don't want to go and do it. There are days like this morning I did legs, and I kind of knew I needed to do legs and I wanted to do legs, but it wasn't the best workout, but I got the work done. So I'm going to call this one of my rule of thirds, right? Sometimes like a third of the workouts are amazing, like super motivated, yeah, good pre-workout. Everything just seems to click. Yes, those are the good workouts. A third of them are terrible, like you're just going through the motions, like, but at least you went. And the third are in the middle. It's like, that's pretty good. And so we can't expect everything to be amazing. And now I'm writing a book now as well, another one. And I got to understand it's the same thing. Sometimes a third of the time I'm going to sit down and words are going to flow fluidly. A third time it's going to be like I'm typing like an old style keyboard, and the words are coming out as hard work, and then a third of it's going to be like, okay, I've written some stuff, because I know that the edit is the most important part. So it's about getting that. So motivation is fleeting. It's the promises we keep to ourselves, or we set for ourselves, if we keep those. And I think there was Kobe Bryant. I've been watching a lot of his videos. He talked about how he sets his training program, or set his training program before the season. And then he said, that is the decision. He says, there's no ongoing negotiation. Like, he's committed to that process before, and there's no negotiation. Like, that is at the door. It's like, I show up, I do the work. The point for negotiation and discussion is at the beginning, where you say, do I want this? Do I want this? That's the point we do it. As soon as you say yes, here we go.
See, that's so awesome. I mean, you described that perfectly. Now I want to try to transition a little bit, but intertwine them, because the next phase I want to really talk about your studies as in the behavioral sciences and NLP and all that. But before we dive into that, can you explain what that is and what NLP is for the listeners that don't know, before I ask the next question?
Yeah. So I guess I've studied two areas. The first one that I studied was this idea of NLP, or neuro-linguistic programming. So I got into this. A friend of mine gave me a CD, and he said, hey, listen to this. At the time I was training with people and doing personal training, and he said, try this, I think it will help. And so neuro-linguistic programming is a way of explaining some of the things that the brain does, and we give it some kind of form of recipe. It was designed by a linguist and a computer scientist. And they effectively said, look, if we do things in the brain, can we codify it? Can we put it into some kind of repeatable process? And so they would look at things like, how do we get into rapport as people? And they say, okay, well, if you do this, this, and this is how you create rapport. Or if we, how do we come up with stories that change people's thoughts? And, what are the levels of thoughts that we have? And all these things. There's a load of models and tools that we can use in there. But effectively, it's a very powerful coaching tool that you can, or series of tools that you can use to get people to think differently. Because if we can think differently, i.e. neuro, and speak differently, linguistic, then our programming, the way we kind of do things in our head that results in actions, changes, right? So that's kind of how I originally got into it, is this interest that, okay, we think differently, speak differently, act differently, it's all intertwined. So that was that. And then I guess moving on later on, the science of behavioral science, that kind of really ramped up over the last 5-10 years. Books like Thinking Fast and Slow, Nudge, Predictably Irrational. These guys are showing actually how our brain isn't as cool as we think it is. I mean, it's cool. It does some amazing things, but it has these little hiccups. And actually, it's these hiccups that cause a lot of our bad decisions. And if we can understand that, and we can understand our programming, then we can make fewer bad decisions, some better decisions, and ultimately be a little bit more successful.
No, so that's so awesome. And I mean, that was one of the things that really, interested me too, like with NLP and all those kind of things. I mean, nowadays on social media, you hear a lot of, NLP, like sales tactics and all that kind of stuff. What really interested me though is like, one thing I heard a speaker say one time at an event, he was, talking about how to basically tell someone they should be proud of themselves versus you saying you're proud of them. And then it really like made me think about it, if growing up as a kid, like how that would have made me feel, but then also like that effect that it could have on my daughter, right? Instead of being like, hey, I'm so proud of you for doing X, right? And now they're doing things to make you proud versus being like, wow, I saw all the hard work that you just put in for that. You should be so proud of yourself, right? And then re-twisting the same sentence to make them feel, essentially proud of themselves versus looking for external praise. But what I do want to ask, now that you've explained what it is a little bit, how do you think that your studies and stuff has shaped the way, or the approach, at least for your bodybuilding journey?
So I think there's a few things. I did a lot of work this year on mental toughness and imposter syndrome. And mental toughness is another framework, a well scientifically researched one, which talks about, I guess, resilience, but the next level. Right, is we all face adversity. And it's funny that you mentioned NLP and sales. That's been like my background for 15, 20 years. I don't even know how long now. So those tools and techniques in the hands of salespeople are great. They're amazing as a parent. Like as a parent, I have to really check all of my things that you're saying there. But from a bodybuilding perspective, it's this idea of mental toughness is that we're going to face adversity. We're going to face challenge along the journey. A lot of people don't expect it. And they're like, oh, everything's going to go well. And successful people will just get it so easy. And the reality is that we all go through this kind of change curve as we think things are going great. And then we have a little bit of adversity. And then we find ourselves in this kind of valley of despair thing where it's like, oh my God, it's so hard. And I remember this as a bodybuilder. And, you step on the scales and you look in the mirror and it's like every single day you're the same. And I'm trying to push hard and I'm trying to diet and I'm tired. And I'm probably a little bit grumpy and I don't want to go to work and it's like tired on this morning and all these kind of things. And you look in the mirror and it's like, I'm the same as yesterday. Like, I'm going nowhere. And like the overwhelming urge in that point is to quit and go and do something else, because you just say to yourself, well, maybe Dan, you're not that good. And, you could probably do something else. And the voice has so much of a resonance because, and this is where, again, the NLP kicks in, is because your inner voice knows all of the deepest, darkest, hidden parts of you, and it knows exactly what to say to get you to want to quit. Like it knows, because it's you, right? It's like, hey, if you say this to Dan, he's going to cry. It's that kind of aspect. And so it brings out all of the things. It's like, hey, remember that time when you sucked and you failed? Yeah, you're not very good, are you? Why don't you try that? Like, hey, what about that time? You weren't good there, you quit there, you're probably going to quit now. All of the voices come in. And what do you do? Like, what do you do? Because you're in this valley of despair. Everything seems to be going terribly. Everything about you wants to quit. So how do you not quit? That's one of the biggest questions. How do you not quit? How do you stay attached to something? Is that a vision? Is it a purpose? Is it an identity? Is it this archetype or like avatar that you've created for yourself that you want to become, you want to step into, that calls you so much because you know that that's the person you're supposed to be, not the person you have been in the past. There's so many different aspects that kind of tie into it. And all you need to do, and this is where discipline comes in, is go and do one more thing, one more step in that direction when everything about you says you don't want to do it. You don't want to do it. And that's not physical. Like going to the gym, being in the gym and lifting the weights is easy compared to that. That is the single biggest lift that I've ever had to do, is to say on those days where I don't want to do it, is just get up, down and go and do it. And there've been times where I've sat there and gone, I don't know if I can do it. And surround yourself with good people. Like my brother is my coach. He's been phenomenal. He always just knows what to say in a kind of way that brothers can. It's like, shut up and get on with it. But slightly more artistic. I've got friends that have been supporting me on the journey. Now that I've been competing, I've got peers that I aspire to be like, because, I've seen their journey. I've seen what they're capable of, and they've encouraged me and I've encouraged them. And, eventually you just start to believe, but you have to go through that. You have to go through that dip, and then you come up on the other side and you're like, oh, okay, maybe something is going to happen and we're on the right track. So, but there are definitely dark moments, and that's where the psychology really kicks in. Anybody can be successful if things are always going well. It's how do you get through those dark times?
Right. No, and I think it's like you said in the past, like the mental work is going to be harder than the physical work in a lot of aspects, right? And it's easy to, lift some weights, but it's a lot harder to get yourself out of that, average mindset that you've quoted before. And it's one of those things where if you're looking for the excuse, your brain will give you a million excuses, right? Your brain will tell you a million reasons why you can't do something. But you have to find that one reason or that one purpose or whatever the case may be in your situation to push through it. And you only need one, and that really sticks. And it has to be something that is truly meaningful to you for it to really, really work, right? But what advice do you have for someone who feels stuck in an average mindset per se and doesn't know how to break out of it?
Cool. So the first thing to realize is it's not your fault. It's not your fault that you're stuck. This is the fun part of behavioral psychology, is that our brain is wired to keep us away from change, because change is dangerous, right? Our brain doesn't like it. It's like, oh, let's stay over here. It's safe. It doesn't matter if it's rubbish and not very nice. That it's going to keep us there. I'll tell you about one brain thing that is the region beta paradox. It's called. It's a kind of this researched idea, is that we have this this area in our psychology, which is a gray area. So let me ask you a question. If you were going to go somewhere, it's a mile away, right? You're in, well, it's a bad example because you're in LA, so you would drive anyway. But let's say you're in New York, right? It's a sunny-ish day. It's a little bit cold. You got to go a mile, right? You got to go a mile. How would you get there? If you're going to go a mile, sunny day, you probably walk, right? You're going to enjoy the sunshine. Maybe it's through the park. You're like, oh, okay, it's a good day. It's 1 mile. It's maybe 15 minutes walk, something like that. Now, if it was 5 miles, how would you get there?
Probably drive.
You probably drive, right? I mean, it's in New York, so nobody drives, but you maybe take the bus or you take some form of motorized transport, maybe a bike even or something like that. So 1 mile you walk, 5 miles, you're going to take a different piece of transport. At what point do you switch?
For me personally, it'd be time efficiency.
Right, and that's what you would think, right? So actually, time efficiency would say that you'd immediately get on the bus. You wouldn't even do the 1 mile. It's about kind of half a mile is where it's good to walk because you gotta get, if you're going to do a bike or something, you have to change, you have to lock it up, you have to walk to the bus stop, which is slightly the wrong direction. All of these things. There's an efficiency piece, right? But most people don't. Most people say, "Oh, well, it's a nice day. I'm gonna walk 2 miles, because I feel good. I'll get the steps in or something like that." But this isn't about walking. This is about a continuum. So, like you say, at some point in there, you decide when you're going to change. At one end, it's not bad enough to change. On the other end, you're going to change. So let's take it to a different concept. Let's take about somebody has a rubbish job. Okay, somebody has a rubbish job. At one end of the continuum, oh, it's not that bad. I don't hate it that much. And at the other end, it's like, this is the worst job ever. Right? Mm-hmm. At what point do you switch? At what point do you say, this is terrible. I need to quit my job and go and do something different? We move it, right? We move that continuum. And it's really easy. So maybe you have a conversation, you're chatting to your friend loves their job. And, they're like, oh, I hate my job. And so just quit it then, Yeah. And you're like, oh, I feel super motivated. I'm going to go and do it. All these things. But then you talk to another friend. They say, oh, did you hear about Dave? Like, Dave's just lost his job. At least you've got a job. And you're like, oh, yeah, maybe I shouldn't quit my job then because, what happens with this? And so we're able to take the pressure off really easily by comparing ourselves to others. And so what most people do is they're feeling stuck is they're using comparison wrong. They're using it externally. They say, oh, well, at least I'm not as bad as that person, or it could be worse, or, better not change it. But the devil, we use all of these kind of ways of justifying staying stuck as opposed to saying, how bad does it need to get before I've had enough? And all it is a psychological continuum. Like you said, it's like, well, I think I'm about there. And we're just thinking, right? It's nuts. It's this idea that there's this massive part where we should have changed, but we haven't, because we haven't allowed ourselves to experience it to be too bad. And that's jobs, that's relationship, that's health, that's finances, that's all of these areas is because we're constantly comparing ourselves. And the only comparison we need is us against our potential.
Right.
That's the comparison. If we say that this is where we are and this is where we feel that we should be, and if that gap isn't, like, if that gap exists, and we need to do something to change it. So it's not our fault that we get stuck, but it is our responsibility if we want to get unstuck.
No, so that's awesome. And I think there is a place for comparison, but in saying that, it's personal comparison, right? And I say that because, the quote is, comparison is the thief of all joy. And that's external, comparison, right? And I can say from my personal story, that's me and my business partner were talking about it, and there was a point where we felt, the business wasn't growing and so forth. And it wasn't that we weren't growing. It was, we just we had to wait for certain things to happen. It was out of our control, but everything else was moving so fast. And then I told him, I was like, man, if you really think about it, like, think about where the person we were a year ago, 5 years ago, right? And then you compare yourself to your previous version of you, and it can give you that, relift or that re-kick in the butt to keep, things going. But that's where you should be comparing yourself, right? For you, let's say for bodybuilding, right? You compared, I guarantee you probably compared yourself to the first show to this show, right? And now going into the next show, how was I prepping the last time? Am I doing better? Am I on point more? Am I, really focused in on my workouts, And so you're comparing yourself to your previous version of you. You're not comparing yourself to the person that won first place this time, because their results and their work has nothing to do with your results, right? So that's where I think comparison is healthy, but you just got to make sure that you're not, trying to compare to other people, because at the end of the day, they don't have an effect on what you got going on.
Yeah, I remember being in the Nike store in San Francisco. This is a number of years ago, and picking up an Oregon Ducks shirt. Right, and the reason I picked up the Oregon Ducks shirt is because inside the neck of the Oregon Ducks football shirt is a phrase that says "You versus yesterday" inside the shirt, and I'm like, oh man, that is it, right? And this is what comparison should be. It's you versus that yesterday version of you, exactly as you said. And the challenge with bodybuilding is it's very visual, right? So I'd be in the gym and go into the posing room at the end, take the t-shirt off, and you're there, and you're standing, and you're like, I look exactly the same as yesterday. And filters come in and perceptions come in, and you're like, oh, the light isn't so good, or I feel a little bit blurred, something along those lines. So objective is, subjective. I feel a certain way. I'm looking at it, I have negative blinkers on, and, oh, you look terrible. We've got to create metrics, so we've got to find metrics. And so one of the things I did every single day and like for weeks before the competition was I stepped on my scales. I got my scales down there. It's like first thing in the morning, you go to the bathroom so you're as light as possible. And then you take off as many clothes as you can without people getting offended in case they can see through the window. And you stand on scales and you hold your breath. You're like, oh, is it better than yesterday? And weight is such a slow change, but you can track it over time. And that's for you. It's like for business is, okay, well, it looks the same as yesterday, but what have we done? What seeds have we planted that's going to mean that we're going to grow? What, as an author, I'm writing a book now, is what seeds have I done today? How have I written and contributed today? Because even though I can't see the book is going to take a long time to come out. How do I know that I've taken steps towards it? And as long as I can track those, as long as I have metrics that show me that I've progressed, so me versus yesterday, I've won that battle, like that's when it comes in. So don't worry about how you think or feel. Track something, measure something, and know you're making progress, and eventually it will all come together.
No, see, that's the thing I love about the inner working of both fitness and business, because they have so many correlating values and things that you develop on a personal level. Being an entrepreneur, being a fitness enthusiast, right? The hardest thing to do is, let's say in fitness, look at yourself day after day in the mirror and not see change, yet go to the gym and repeat the process, right? Same thing with business. Like, you feel like you're doing everything you need to do and you're not seeing the immediate change, but those things stacked up over time, this consistent, mini wins or mini seeds that you're talking about, that starts to really flourish and grow into your garden of success. So I think that's so awesome. And that's one of my biggest things that I love, comparing fitness to business. And luckily enough, I'm in the fitness business, but that's awesome that you say that. Now, before we wrap up though, one thing I do want to ask, and I don't like to give this question ahead of time because I want the authentic answer. First thing that comes to your mind is, you have the Dan Storey legacy wall, right? And on this legacy wall, you get to leave a message for the up and coming generation, whether it's in, the sciences that you studied, whether it's in, being a dad, whether it's in bodybuilding, whatever the case, whatever, part of your life you would like to be. But what would that one message that really resonates with you be?
So it's going to be around authenticity, but not in a cheesy way, but I think just owning your feelings. And this is something that it took me a long time to learn. And I have a very specific moment in mind. So I'll tell you what it is in a minute. But I think one of the challenges that we've got, and I was talking about this to a new friend today, is that social media puts such a veneer on things, and we pretend to be this social media. Like, I'm pretending now to be this podcast guest. I'm not. There's a mess over there that I should have tidied up. There's boxes over there that my wife asked me a couple of days ago. We had an argument about it yesterday. So why only put those boxes out? Come on, there's the real world, right? And the real world is messy, and it's not perfect. And we, even the most motivated ones of us, like, have down days, and we have demons inside of us and all of those things. And a long time ago, not that long ago, but long enough, I used to work in the personal development industry, right? And so my life was motivational seminars. That was my entire life. I would spend weekends in there, and during the week I'd be marketing them. I'd be speaking to speakers, helping them prepare, getting ready to step on stage. Oh, we're going to say this, it's going to be amazing. People are going to be just going crazy, that kind of thing. My life was positive. And so I tried to make everything about my life positive. And, to say, oh, life is great. And at the same time, some of my family members were struggling with depression and anxiety and all those kind of things. And so I didn't feel like I could have a damn time. I was like, I have to be the positive one. I have to, like, so I built this idea up in my head, I think probably a little bit more than anything, that everything was good and everything was awesome, just like the Lego song. And at one point, it all came crashing down, because inside of us, there's a dark part. And this is what I've learned, is that everyone has a dark side to them. It's not negative. It's very powerful. But if we don't harness it, it comes out in the worst possible ways. And you're nodding, so you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? So
Yeah.
I didn't know how to channel this part of me. And so I did so many detrimental things and abused my life and people and all these kind of things, and just in a way that nobody ever saw. Like, I managed to keep it secret, and it was a dark part of me. And at one point it all came out, and I was like, I've had enough. I can't live two lives. And I went home, and I remember calling my sister, and we should all have a person, right? We should all have a person that we can talk to when things get hard. And luckily it was my sister, and I called her and I said, help, something like that. I said, everything is terrible, everything is ruined. And she said, you know what? This is the first conversation we've actually had. She's like, every other conversation has been how things are great and groovy and awesome and there's nothing ever wrong. It's like the first time you've ever actually spoken to me as a human being. And like, as much as that was a punch in the gut to add to the kind of woes, it helped me realize is that, like, life isn't always positive, and that adversity is going to be against us. And if we pretend that it's not there, we're lying to ourselves. And this is it. No, so, if people are listening, is cultivate relationships around you where you can be entirely yourself and be authentic. Find people where, if you say you're having an awesome day, they're going to cheer you on, right? Dan, go for it. Like, I've got so many people like, tell me about the body. How's it going? Like, genuinely interested. I'm like, really? I can talk about this and be excited? And they're like, yeah. And at the same time, I can call them and say, you know what? I've got this choice and I really don't know what to do. And, I'm kind of worried that if I do this, something's going to happen. And they'll talk to me through it, and they'll be as supportive in that side as they would be on the other side. And that's what being real is. And maybe that friendship group isn't massive. It's a smaller number of people that know you really well. But I think that's what people want. People want intimate connection. And, we don't get that in the artificiality of the internet and social media. We've got to find that, and we've got to cultivate it. So maybe that is, and this is what I'm trying to do with my social media and trying to do with my messaging, is say that it's hard. And I'm going to quote DMX, because I wrote this in my newsletter, and I love DMX and I love 90s hip hop and R&B. And he says, to live is to suffer, to die, to survive is to find meaning in the suffering. And is that adversity is going to come and punch us in the face. But as long as we're doing something, we love what we're doing, and we're chasing something and it's worthwhile, then you can deal with that suffering. It's okay.
No, see, like that's so awesome. That's an awesome legacy wall. And I think it is so true, right? You do have to have those people, or even that person, that you mentioned Kobe Bryant earlier, right? So I'm gonna reference him, right? He had a mask, essentially, right? The Black Mamba, right? And he wasn't a Black Mamba when he went home with his wife and with his daughters, right? So you have to be able to harness that darkness for the time it needs to be. That's the competitive side of you. That's the top, that's the, whatever industry or profession or whatever you're doing, that's the time you put that all into go mode. But you have to have that lighter side of you, that you could just be you, right? That you can realize. I mentioned it multiple times, even to my clients and stuff. Like, I'm a gym owner, I'm a personal trainer, yet I don't want to work out every single day. Like, and that's the truth of it. And I tell them, I was like, and I've mentioned this on the podcast before, if you have a personal trainer that tells you they are motivated to work out every single day, 365 days a year, they're lying to you. Yeah. Right? There has to be a day that they're like, I don't feel like doing it, I'm going to do it anyways, but they don't feel like doing it, right? And that's okay. That's life, right? So I think that's so awesome that you mentioned that for your legacy wall. That is definitely one of the first times that someone actually has brought in that comparison and that realization to their legacy wall. So that is awesome.
I'm going to say that even with that shouldn't stop you from playing a massive game. Like, so Kobe Bryant, like that, aim high, aim as high as you can, and challenge, push the limits. knowing that you're going to feel like terrible anyway, but go and do it anyway. Like, life's too short.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, there's a time and place for it, right? You know, you could feel tired and tell people you're good when you're at work, right? You know, when you're at home, like it's okay to be tired and let them in, right? So, and I mean, you're a living, breathing example of that, right? You know, the world is limitless. Your potential is limitless, right? You can switch and you can pivot and you can become, and you know, I don't know if you can get to the level that you're getting to, but you know, someone like you has already demonstrated that. Look, you know, in 2 years, you know, you're already on the top stages, you know, placing in the top, right? Next year, you're going to be hitting first place, right? So, and we better be seeing that, you know, so you got to put that work in. But you can pivot at any point. So where can people connect with you and, you know, really watch you come on first?
So I am trying to do a little bit more on Instagram. So come and find me on Instagram at Dan Storey. My website is danstorey.com. And I've just started a newsletter. So I have a podcast as well, but come and follow my newsletter. And it's called the Pep Talk. So I'm just kind of getting into this, which is purpose, energy, productivity. And I think if we focus on those three things as a regular focus for our life, and that we do the things that are important, we energize ourselves so we can kind of go at it with some vitality. And if we're able to push ourselves and, you know, focus on the things that matter, then I think we'll be doing well. So sign up for the Pep Talk newsletter on my website, danstorey.com, and come and follow me on social as well.
Guys, all those will be in the show notes. You know, Dan, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day, you know, with the family, with work and everything, and hopping on to the Mindset Cafe. And guys, if you're listening to this, I know you guys got some knowledge nuggets that you guys have benefited from. Make sure you guys share this episode with a friend and leave us that 5-star review. Dan, thank you so much for taking the time.
It's been a pleasure, and hope those people who've listened have taken some ideas and are going to go and kick ass.
They definitely have.
No negative vibes, only positive thoughts. Just in the game of life, my